applications in the certification were that simple. Yeah. Configuring a communication manner as an application and application sequence. So the next step, once you have your CM as a managed element in the inventory, is adding CM as an application. Very simple. All you need to do is go to application configuration under the session manager menu and give your application a name, and then specify the SIP entity that you have for that CM and the managed element that you just created for that CM.
So that SIP entity could either just be the only entity that you have to CM, or as we were drawing a bit earlier, it might be the Optum trunk entity, because you'd have a separate entity for the Optum if you wanted to keep sequencing off the...
Yeah, it would be
the one. I
one.
haven't figured out exactly why to separate Optum and your normal call path.
Just to separate traffic, you know, and it's the only reason is just so that you separate traffic, and because now through that Optim trunk, all you're gonna see is traffic for the SIP phones to have features coming from CM, or when you wanna place a call from a SIP phone to another SIP phone, you'll use that trunk as well. So internal calls between SIP phones will use that trunk. But just to separate traffic, you're gonna see that actually here, for example, in the lab, we're not separating trunks. The one that you created yesterday for communicating out of CM is the same one we're gonna use for AST traffic. It's not the best practice, but we're gonna do it in the lab, you know? Okay, so let's do this lab where you're gonna add CM as an application, and then in the next step, you're gonna add CM as a sequence. So you're gonna create a sequence, and we'll have only one application in the sequence. You could potentially have more. However, when you have CM as an evolution server, you need to be careful with that. You know, having multiple applications in the sequence. And I probably mentioned something that I don't want to go to right now. CM as an evolution server, CM as a feature server. Have you heard of that before?
Yeah.
So starting with release 6, Avaya, your CM could be an evolution server or a feature server. If your CM still supports non-SIP phones and non-SIP trunks, you have an evolution server. If your CM it's a complete SIP environment with only SIP endpoints and some only SIP trunks, your CM is a feature server. I personally don't like the name that they gave it, because it makes you think that only when you have CM as a feature server, your CM provides features.
Right.
But that's not the case. I mean, right now we have CM as an evolution server in the lab because you have some AC23 devices, right, instead of all SIP phones. So it's still an evolution server, but it's gonna be able to provide features to the SIP phone.
Right.
So I don't like the name.
So it's just a naming convention. That's all it is, right?
Yeah, but there is a tiny parameter in the signaling group that makes the CM work as an evolution server or as a feature server.
Oh, okay.
So that parameter, now that you asked about it, if you go to the signaling group, the one that you created yesterday, if you set these parameters IMS enabled, if you set it to no, your CM works as an evolution server. If you set it to yes, as a feature server.
Wow. What does IMS stand for?
IP Multimedia Subsystem.
Oh, okay.
Avaya doesn't support having some trunks with IMS set to no and other trunks with IMS set to yes. Doesn't support that.
Oh.
Could it work? Yes, I've tried. But it doesn't support that, and you should go with either all set to yes if you truly have a CM as a feature server where you don't have any non-SIP endpoints, but everything is SIP, or you go with IMS set to no and you have an evolution server. Most of the Avaya customers right now are with evolution servers because they still have TDM stuff. Okay? So why is that I said that? Okay, because I said you could have multiple applications in the sequence. If you have CM as an evolution server, you kind of need to be careful with having multiple applications in that sequence. because the order of those applications matter a lot. When you have CM as an evolution server, your CM works in the full call model. Man, I don't want to go there, but it processes both. It processes the call in the first half. Let me see if I mean, I already went there, so I have to do it.
You open the door.
Let me think about it. I think I have a slide that's going to be probably better. Yeah, this is the slide that I want. So when you have CM, let's see first CM as an evolution server. Yep. So session manager always works as what's known as a true IMS is server, which means that it always splits that call in two halves. So from a session manager perspective, I mean, it always works in the half call model, where it first sends a request to CM to apply features on behalf of the caller, and then it sends another request to apply features on behalf of the callee. So session manager always splits the call in two halves. Now, when you have CM as an evolution server, which is what we have right now, I mean, the first invite that goes to CM is for line reservation. Let's forget about that one. But then the next invite that goes to CM, CM does some origination processing, meaning that it checks for features to be applied on behalf of the caller. And then it does some dialing analysis, and it does some termination processes, which means that it's going to check for features to be applied to the callee. So in the first half of the call, it's going to apply features for both the caller and the callee. Because that CM as an evolution server works in the full call model, which means that in the first half of the call, it does everything.
Right.
Send it back to session manager. Session manager has no idea that CM worked in the full call model, but session manager always works in the half call model. So since it has no idea that CM already did everything, it sends the invite back to CM. And CM at this point
Says, I don't have to give you any more.
I don't have to do anything.
Right.
So it doesn't do anything and sends the invite back to session manager.
And that's that's when CM is an evolution.
That's when CM is an evolution server.
Okay.
How does CM guarantee that's not going to do anything on the second half of the call? Well, CM puts a shortcut flag in one header so that when it receives that invite back, it checks, and if it sees that shortcut flag, it doesn't do anything. You see? Actually, in the next slide, I have how the shortcut flag looks like. It's in the accept contact header, and there is this thing called shortcut, and if CM finds that, it doesn't do any more processing on the second half of the call. Now, that's for an evolution server. For a feature server, CM works in the half call model, which means that in the first half, features are applied for the caller, not for the callee. The invite sent back to session manager, and then in the other half, in the second half of the call, features are applied to the callee. Did I say it right?
Yeah.
First half for the caller, second half for the callee.
Right.
And that's defined because the signaling group for that trunk to session manager has the IMS
Set to yes.
yes.
Yeah.
So
Which allows, the fact that it's set to yes allows CM to understand some phase tags. These are some phase tags that are on the invite that allow CM to know in which half of the call CM is. You know, yeah, to identify which half of the call is being managed at that point. So when you say to yes, CM is able to understand those tags. These tags that you see here.
So would it be possible then to have an evolution server that has IMS set to no?
That's actually how you want it, as set to no.
As an evolution server?
Yeah. Because if you set it to yes, you're going
Oh, I'm sorry, set to yes.
No. No. I mean, you could do it. It probably could work with certain things, but there's some other stuff that's not going to work, and Avaya doesn't support that. I mean, if you have endpoints that are non-SIP endpoints registered to your CM, it should be configured as an evolution server. Feature server, I mean, CM as a feature server is only for when you only have SIP endpoints, not registered to CM. They always register to session manager, but grabbing features from CM, and that's it. No other type of endpoint, but only SIP endpoints registered to session manager. Now, so why is that I came here? Because I said that sequencing, you need to be careful when you have sequencing for an evolution server. Remember, the evolution server is where you have this shortcut here.
Right.
So if you have a sequence of applications that are going to be applied for the caller and the callee, you want to be very careful, because if you put one application here in the middle and it messes up the shortcut flag, for some reason it removes the shortcut flag or it does something to the shortcut flag, then CM end up doing double processing for that one call. It processes the call twice. You know, so normally when we have a CM as an evolution server, we say that sequencing is a little bit limited, because normally you only have one application in the sequence, and that's CM. If you want to have more than one application in the sequence, yes, you could do it, but normally you want to involve Avaya services to make sure that the order that you have in that sequence for all of those applications is the right order. Normally, what you do to kind of be in a safe place is CM, you put it as the last application in the origination sequence and the very first application in the termination sequence, just to guarantee that they're kind of back to back
And nothing's in
and
between.
no one is messing up with that shortcut flag.
Okay.
However, it still doesn't completely guarantee that things are going to work, but that's at least the best approach to make sure that the shortcut flag is not messed up. You guys have an evolution for sure.
Yeah, we must, yeah.
Yeah. I would say that 99% of the customers have an evolution. A few customers are going all the way SIP.
Right.
With SIP, only SIP phones, only SIP
Well, then
trunks.
that's how we know, that's how we know.
Okay, so I went there because